Now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God, through faith in Jesus Christ, for all those who believe. For there is no distinction. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, being justified as a gift by His grace, through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus.
Seems like the news is full of bad news all the time. It seems like CNN lives on bad news. Very seldom do you ever hear anything in the news that's about something good in this day and age. Is that a commentary on our situation or what? So I apologize for sharing the bad news with you last Sabbath. But I'm just reading, and we're going through the book of Romans, and we did discover that as we looked at Romans, there was some bad news. Bad news. And my bad news just disappeared on me. So turn to it. Notice what it said. Verse 10, Romans 3:10. That's the news we looked at last Sabbath. There is none righteous, not what? Even one. And if that wasn't enough, Paul said it again. Verse 12. He's quoting from the Old Testament here. There is none who does good. There is what? Not even one. And that makes some people, well, it offends some people. And as we discovered last Sabbath, it really offends really religious people. When you tell them that there is none good. What we learned last week in our study was that all human beings of every race, rank, of every creed, culture, Jews and Gentiles, the immoral and the moralizing, the religious and the irreligious, are without any exception sinful, guilty, inexcusable, and speechless before God. That's what our text says. That there is a terrible human predicament described in verses chapter 1:18 all the way through chapter 3:20. And there seems to be no ray of light, no flicker of hope, no prospect of rescue if you stopped there with those verses. And it's interesting the way people like to choose the verses in the Bible. And we all do it. We all choose our verses. We like our special verses. And so we choose the verses, and especially when you read Romans, we have discovered and will discover that there's certain verses in Romans we do not like to hear. And there's certain verses in Romans that we love. But if you love a verse in Romans, it must be in context with the entire letter. And exactly what Paul was trying to get across to us. I started this study, and just to give you an insight how significant Romans is. When I start my study on texts, I have at my disposal in my library 42 commentary sets. 32 of those are digital on my hard drive, the complete sets, and 10 are hard copy. But I go to 42 commentaries when I start my study on any text. This study, unfortunately, because I have so much stuff, the biggest challenge for me is to try to choose what we're going to share. One pastor preached on Romans for 3.5 years. And finally he said, man, I'm going to have to do something shorter, a series that's shorter. So he preached in John, and it took him 10 years. Notice in the slide on the screen, this is one of my new commentary sets I'm working on. It's not finished right now. I get a volume about every 2 months. But notice a little picture of the volumes I have, and notice in this series, there is only one other study. Most of the Bible books take one volume. So the author takes one volume to give a commentary. Notice how many volumes there are on Romans in my set. The only book that has more volumes is John, to deal just with the book of Romans. 4 volumes, this particular set. I really like Boyce's set. New stuff, brand new stuff. It's good. And so, all this stuff, I don't know where to start. We're looking at this week the heart of the letter to Romans. These verses are the heart of the letter to Romans. New Testament scholar Dr. Leon Morris says about this paragraph, verses 21 through 26, he says this is possibly the most important single paragraph ever written. Period.